Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast Beyond. I am Tammy Zagarelli, and this is my brother, Mark Zagarelli. How you doing today, Mark?
I'm good. How are you, Tammy?
Very well. Doing very well. So, to introduce the podcast, I'd like to explain a little bit of this is a podcast where we hope that we're walking on a journey with you from unhappiness to happiness. And there's a lot of aspects to that. I did look it up in the dictionary, and because I always say that happiness is actually the booby prize. And that word booby prize is in the dictionary, if you can imagine. So, what I mean by that is that if you don't know why you're happy, you enjoy your happiness. But the big prize in life is going from unhappiness and knowing how to get back to happiness. That's what we're talking about here. And we talk about a lot of different ways to do that, a lot of tactics, we've given, in the past few episodes, a number of stories, personal stories. And today I'd like to talk about the kinds of things that we sometimes take credit for when we're happy. When things are going really well, we get a really good job or something. And when looking forward to happiness, sometimes we're a little bit unhopeful. And looking back on happiness, we sort of take a lot of credit that we sort of did it all ourselves, like we just did this amazing thing and that's why we're so happy. So I want to kind of talk about what I would call the miraculous, or how the universe has a tendency when things are going really well to sort of move things and shape things and make things happen for us that we sometimes take credit for ourselves, even though we have to show up and do the jobs in life, right? I
Absolutely.
mean,
Yes, I totally get
right.
what you're saying. Yes.
You can't become a great teacher unless you've learned how to teach and you're willing to put the time in. But sometimes how we get to those places, I think we have some kind of interesting stories, and I'd love to hear other people's stories if they have them. But why don't you start today, Mark?
Oh, well, and it's funny because the thing that I was thinking as you were saying that is there's three words that get used, and they have it like each of them has a connotation. So like at the bottom is the word luck, like, and sometimes the word dumb is attached like dumb luck because you know dumb luck. I just fell into it. I don't know what happened. I just like, fell off the sidewalk and, landed in a millionaire's arms and he hired me and now I'm a millionaire. Who knows? Right? That's dumb luck,
Right.
right? And then that's at the bottom. And then in the middle, there's what you might call like fortune, that you had a fortunate event happen. And it's like
Or
you
good fortune.
good fortune, right? And like you could see like if you think of the like there's two levels in English, there's two levels of words. One is
Mm.
all the words that came from Old English, like the word luck comes from Old English, okay?
Hmm.
It's a word, it sounds a little more earthy. It's like, it's down in the street, whereas I have good fortune. Fortune is a word that comes from Latin. And there's a history to this. I mean, if you're, it's the when the Normans invaded England and conquered England, they brought their language and they colonized. And so by their lights, French was the educated language. French comes from Latin, whereas
Hmm.
English was the peasants' language. Like these people who happen to be here that we're not particularly interested in because we've conquered them. So you get words, I feel like, for example, like you get words like shrewd and smart, and then you have
Oh.
intelligence, right? Intellect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same, like you
Mm.
see that follow through. So, like this idea of like luck is like, dumb luck versus good.
Or good luck, bad luck, right? It can
Right.
go either way.
It could go either way, but just luck in general is just sort of like something that people fall into. Fortune almost sounds like something you may feel like you deserve or something like that. And then I think at the very top is miracles, like where nobody
Yes.
says, "Oh, that was just dumb miracles." Like miracles are never dumb. Miracles are like the intelligence of the universe working, and I just like
And
all.
that's kind of a good point I want to just make on the word miracles, on the miraculous. Because a lot of times, like I talk about my Glinda magic wand, and the idea of it's sort of the same thing with magic has sort of a cheapened connotation, and miraculous has the idea that it's otherworldly, and but not in sort of magic can be a downgraded, that's, bad magic, and miraculous sort of has a better connotation to it. So sometimes I use
I
magic,
agree.
sometimes I use the
And then
miraculous,
all the way
but
at the bottom is like a trick. And again, you have the same kind of thing of like magic is kind of in the middle, miraculous stuff. And then it's like, that was just a cheap trick. That was just a dirty trick.
or a magic trick. You see how like you don't say a miraculous trick.
Miraculous trick. No,
They don't go together. That's
they don't.
interesting.
Right. Yeah.
Love language. This
Yeah.
is the reason why we put so much emphasis on language on this podcast and changing language and understanding what we're saying. And again, when I like the word when you say, oh, I had the good fortune of, it sort of is like a little bit more ownership than, oh, I had good, what good luck, like that kind of a thing. There's a hierarchy to certain words, like, that then it's a way that we sort of take a little bit of ownership of
Yeah, like
something.
like luck is literally never deserved. Like nobody ever said like I was lucky and I deserve. Well, when you say fortune, it's like, well, I've had a bit of good fortune, and maybe that's just because I'm a virtuous person. I'm not going to say that, but that's a little bit implied there, right? And then miracles are like completely out of your hands. Miracles are like nothing to do. I mean, I think, nothing to do with you. They're like, bam.
Yeah, for me, like with 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 the miraculous, I think it is important, like such an important component to this podcast is the idea, like, yes, we have to participate in things in our life, but you know, where we go back to inner critic, inner guidance. What is the inner guidance? It's the miraculous inside of us. The ability, for me, the inner guidance, the differentiation between the external miraculous and sort of the internal miraculous is inner guidance is the ability to recognize, to feel the miraculous when it's happening, or to feel the negativity when it's happening. And external miraculous, the universe itself, the universe at large is created a miracle, and we're just sort of move through a wormhole in the universe that would take us. A good explanation of the miraculous came from one of my favorite books, A Course in Miracles. You know that. I love that
Yes.
book. And it talks about the idea that something can happen in time that we have here on this planet, which is different than other places in the universe, and that a miracle takes something that could take 1,000 years and collapses time so it happens like that. All the steps happen, but they happen very quickly, which
Yes.
I think is one of the best explanations of of the miraculous that I can imagine. And that's why they get the idea of like miraculous and tricks, magic tricks, right? But there
Yeah,
still is some fun to magic.
that's right. And I've known people who have I want to camouflage this a little bit because I don't want to reveal, but let's say that I've known people who have used magic ritual to bring about an outcome in their life, like, Wiccan magic, white magic, that kind of thing. And they did it with devotion. They didn't do it lightly, whatever. And they still came away at the far end saying, we shouldn't have tampered with that. And the universe set us on our butts for doing that. And I'm not going to go into details, but that, tampering with stuff, even with the best of intention, they both came away saying, like, this is for like worship and observation. This isn't for like meddling in the universe. And
And also, when I think about the miraculous, you can't mess up the miraculous. Like if you pray for somebody, like let's just use sort of religious terms. Like the miraculous comes from the absolutely pure heart of like, you find out someone's sick and you just say a prayer for them, sending out good energy to somebody. You can't mess up the good, the beauty. You can't mess up the things that are of splendor, of
yeah.
miraculous intention. You can't like we think we are so powerful, and we,
Mhm.
like you said, sort of magic has the word sometimes has a connotation of manipulation.
Yes.
I'm going to manipulate. The miraculous is let go, Like it's all good. Feel you instantly feel transported and trusted and safe. I don't know
Yes.
if it's the word trusted, trusting and safety. That's the miraculous. It's being sort of carried away into something better where there is no feeling of we just messed with something here.
Right.
When you
There's no zero sum game. I took a little away from someone to get a little something for myself. Like there's none of that. There's a sense of overriding abundance.
right, and I think that's what most people are talking about when they're talking about magic. Like it's so magical, it's so beautiful. Like that's the intention in which we're using the word. But if we want to upgrade a little bit to the miraculous, it's a very clear cut thing. And I don't know much about uh, you know what you were talking about, like the playing with magic and that kind of thing, because the laws of the universe, which is more the idea of certain laws, like you can't play with the law of attraction. The
Right.
law of attraction is, that's a sort of a universal law. You can't really play with gravity as an earthly law. You step up a building, you're going down. You know what I mean? Like you're so there's not much worry in playing with things that are greater than us in the way of when they're safety is always safe.
Right. And you know what was funny? The you because you mentioned the Course of Miracles. And I remember there was this, I think this is pertinent to it. Like one of the things that said in Course in Miracles is the only weapon you should ever use is love. And the reason for that, if it
Yeah.
isn't self-evident, the reason for that is that you can be disarmed of any weapon you choose. So if you go out with a gun or a knife or a club or a chain or those little tiny throwing stars or whatever, you could someone could take them away from you and then feel very comfortable saying, well, you were going to use this on me, so here you go, right?
Yeah.
If the only weapon you go into the world with is love, hey, allow me to be disarmed. I was being loving. If I'm disarmed, I will be loved, right? So like that's like a little bit of karma right there. Instant karma.
Yeah, and love is the idea is it is so powerful and yet has no harmful side to it. It really doesn't. And one of the things that always amazes me about um the idea of using not using hate to fight hate, using love to fight hate. Like the idea is that whatever we are in the world, the mistake I think that we make is that we're going to use hatred and anger, but we're going to use it the right way. And it's like, wait a second, like it's whatever we have. Like I start, if you use the word knowledge, it makes this a lot more sense. It makes a lot more sense. Like whatever we do, we're giving it away. So
Right.
whatever we do, if I give you all my knowledge, did I get rid of my knowledge? No, I doubled my knowledge. I have all my knowledge and you have all my knowledge. If I give you all my love, do I lose my love? No, I have all my love and you have all my love. Now, if I go out and I give you all my hatred, do I still have all my hatred? Yes. Do I give you all my hatred? Yes. So we're doubling it, but we think that we can get rid of things by taking them out of us. But all we do is double what we focus on, we interact with, we double.
Right.
So
Like an eye for an eye, like everyone ended up blind. I mean, someone smarter than me said that at one point. Right.
right, but it's just it seems we have this feeling like let me get this out of me. Like I've heard that when sometimes people say, "Oh, I just need to vent. I just need to get it out of me," and I'm like, mm-hmm, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't vent. I mean, there are times when, but we are not getting it out of us.
We are
We're
dwelling in it for a time and hopefully to move ourselves in the direction of ultimately handling it in some way.
but we're also spilling it onto the people who are listening.
Right.
So there, no matter, we are not cleansing ourselves of it and getting rid of it. We are sharing it, and maybe sometimes by sharing it, they can help us to heal that. That's not that it's completely unnecessary, but you get where I'm going here,
I do,
right?
yeah. Like I think a real experienced healer, coming from the right place can it's like sort of an, like a ninja move, like can hit what's coming at them can be deflected, diverted. My
Or they may have to
listening,
keep protected. They might have to
they
keep a
put
good protection around
absolutely, yeah, they
themselves.
keep right, absolutely. And I think anyone in healing professions, I mean, like you, even in, my very limited capacity, when someone is I'm thinking of this sweet, wonderful young woman now. She's long graduated. But she was in one of my SAT classes, and at the end of the class, like she came up to me and she was just like literally in tears. And I'm just
Oh.
like, what's going on? And she's like, I'm never going to pass. I just know I'm not going to pass. I'm never going to go to college. I just want to, and at that point, it wasn't for me, it wasn't for me to either say like, cheer up, or oh my God, that's so terrible. I feel so bad for you. There was something else in the middle. There was a third option that it was like not just simply like you can do like, it's a little pep talk, a little bit of sympathy, a little bit of so help me understand what you're really afraid of because it seems like you're doing okay. Like there's a combination of things to help her.
Right. And that's the difference between just full blown venting for this, for with no purpose.
Right.
People are coming to me and telling me their problems. And with the understanding that we're going to grow from this, we're going to get something from it. I'm what I was talking about is sort of like, I'm just going to like, I'm not looking for an answer. I'm just going to, and there are moments in life where we have to be hurt or upset. We're not talking about that. Just, I am going to, take my feelings and I got to get this out of me. And I'm just going to, blah, 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 and it's like people are walking around like, oh, like, because it isn't that when we just do that, that we're really cleansing ourselves of a feeling. There's a different intention behind something where you say, I'm really gonna work on this. That's why I talk about flipping the pancake. Like, what's the best use of negativity? The best use of it is to look at it. So now you know what you don't want. Flip it as quickly as you can. Sometimes you have to sit there and pull it apart a little bit, flip it as quickly as you can to say, if I know what I don't want, then maybe I know what I do want. And that gives purpose to the negative event. Doesn't mean, I mean, everything is happening for a reason. And I say everything is happening for a good reason, even though sometimes it doesn't look that way. But we got to flip that pancake. And a lot of times, especially as a four in the Enneagram, look up the Enneagram, guys. I can be overindulgent in my emotions, even though they're my emotions can be my superpower and my kryptonite, right?
Right.
Sometimes.
Sure.
So anyway, I'm derailing you from the conversation
No,
you
I
were gonna
wouldn't,
have.
not at
Tell
all.
me.
And I guess I wanted to, oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to add, like, since we're talking about our Enneagram, if there's people out there like I'm a seven, which is very opposite, very dissimilar from four. And I was going to say, a four may fall into a wallow that lasts a real long time. And a seven may try to skip like a stone over the waves and not fall in. And eventually that stone's gonna fall in. So it's like, for you, the challenge is once in getting out. And for me, the challenge is allowing myself sometimes to just fall into it. It's like have the emotions, just have the emotions.
Yeah.
You can't just think and act and think and act and think and act your way out of stuff and just like I'm going to stay 3 steps ahead of my emotions. Can work for a time, not a sustainable way of.
Right. And what I love about the Enneagram, which we're not going to get too much into that, it's like it's based on absolutely nothing. It's not based on astrology, it's not based on
Right. Except it
anything
works.
spiritual.
Except it just works great.
Yeah, it's just one of those, personality sort of typing systems. What's the other one? That's the Myers-Briggs, I think it is.
Myers-Briggs, people are, I think maybe these days more familiar with Myers-Briggs. I'm not as familiar
Right.
with it, but it's pretty good. It's good too.
Yeah, yeah. It's a I feel like it's a not quite as good version of the Enneagram, but it's not based on a religion or a spirituality. It's just, it gives a good way to learn a little bit about yourself. And we use it all the time. And I use it all the time in my coaching.
Oh yeah.
So, but it's not something we're going to delve into here. It's very easy to look up, and it's fun. It's kind of a little fun to figure out about yourself, because at the end of the day, you do find, and what's interesting about the Enneagram is that you sort of pick it by the thing that is your flaw, your a little bit of your kryptonite. Like you pick out your who, you decide for yourself what you are. It's so when
Yeah,
you
there's
read the
nine
descriptions,
personalities, and then you read them and you go like, yeah, that's me. So
oh, that's
sometimes people just go like, yeah, that's me. Um, Often people go, "Oh, that's me," and isn't that great? And it's like a good friend of mine said, like, "No, you're not. No, no, this isn't good news. This is like, this is this is what your friends refer to as the trouble with you."
who was the Quentin
That was
Crisp, wasn't
Quentin
it?
Crisp who said that, and it's a great line. It's just, we all,
Yeah, it's the thing that if everybody could tell you, you know, if you just did, like, you're like going around and going crazy about something, and it's like, I just wish I could figure this out. And everybody is like, it's this, like it's just so simple.
right.
But what people could instantly say if they just did this,
It would your life
straighten
would get
out the,
better. This is that com It's a combination of that compulsive stuff that you do just without thinking. And I think full stop right there. I think it's like the obsessive and compulsive stuff combined with sort of what falls naturally on your radar screen. So your sensitivities to certain things in the world that are really there, but then turning them into, patterns of avoidance or patterns of obsession, that kind of stuff. So it's,
right.
yeah.
But anyway, back to the
Yes.
miraculous. We've both, I'm gonna let you start with this, but we've both had some things that, and I've had many. I think you've had many. I think most people have had some version of this. I think we've had a lot of versions of this, but there are ones that come to mind. But you said there's one or two that I don't know about you,
Yeah, a
and
lot of it's like 'cause there's a
then I'll
real
speak.
like some of them are really profound. Like, I mean, put me in my career path, which is really cool when that happens. And it's
Me
like,
too.
yeah, I know that. But like there was one I wanted to talk about that was just because I literally don't have an explanation for this. It's like when I tell the story, you can doubt, but I'm going to tell you the exact facts of what happened, and I have no explanation for this. So this is back in the days. Remember when you owned a printer? I don't, probably somebody still owns a printer, but like, okay, so you owned a
Yeah,
printer, right? Because you had to print stuff out and put it in envelopes and send it to, like it was like that. Okay.
the stamp on it.
There was a stamp on it, right? Okay. So it was a whole other worldview, children. Um, so I had written what we called a letter. It was, so on my word processor, I wrote, and then I was going to print it out. And it was like one of those it wasn't, fortunately, I mean, for myself, it wasn't, those letters that people say don't ever send that letter, like you wrote 10 pages about how terrible another person is and how they've done you. And it's like, and your therapist, if they're a good therapist, says, that was a wonderful exercise. Don't you dare send that. Okay.
Right. These days,
Write another one.
don't press send on the
Don't press
email,
send, right? Because now it's
or the
easier.
text.
Now it's way easier, right? At that, you don't have to go buy a stamp anymore. You can just in the heat of anger. So it wasn't that. But it was a cringy letter that was a combination of needy and like I think the person who received it would have been like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, and then
Wow.
I've looked at it, I've thought about it since, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like
It's
that
hard
was,
for me to imagine you doing something like that. I can imagine
oh,
me doing something like that,
oh,
but
your
I
imagination, you need to open up wide to the, like, yeah, oh, I could definitely do that.
Okay.
from the best of intentions. Like I was like, I want us to be closer, and here's what I need from you. And like you can see where this is going. Like this is just like not
Okay.
the direction.
Yeah.
Okay, so did all that, printed it out, and then I pulled it I off the printer and I look and it says, Dear blah blah blah. And then there's the body of the letter. And between dear blah 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 and the body of the letter, there is the word don't.
I love these things. I love
Now,
that is the universe at work.
they
I
call
love, love, love it.
in the day they called it line noise. Like, oh, well, what's like, first of all, what on earth is line noise? Like, explain to me how the word don't ended up like. So I looked at it like this is a message and I'm gonna take it. And I tore up the
Oh
letter.
yeah.
Right, right. I tore up
Wow.
I've never regretted that. I'm like, thank you, people in the higher place that sent me that message. I heard you,
Oh, and they do, and they
and they
do. They
do.
do.
If
Your
you
spirit guides are watching down and saying, just save him the trouble. He doesn't need this lesson,
he
you
doesn't
know?
need to, thank you. I must have done something, good that, what I did something good that week or that month or that lifetime or something.
Well, I believe the universe sends you the same lesson over and over again until you get it. So
Absolutely.
you had probably been through a few times when you had maybe not sent the letter, but had the conversation or had the,
We
we call
talk.
them a clarifying conversation, and
Right.
sometimes they're more
Right.
selfishly based.
Right. Right. And I mean, in the last couple of these episodes, I've said sort of like a lot of times it's an inside job, and I'm like leaning more and more into so
It's
many
always an
times.
inside job. I mean,
I mean,
you
I'm
may
not
have to
going to
get
say
other people
always. There's
involved.
certainly times when you need to, like, look, I need to say this to you. I'm gonna say it to you, and here it comes.
But I
And
think let me clarify what I mean by that. When I say it's always an inside job, you've got to discern where you're coming from. Are you coming from, if you're coming from your inner guidance, that's an inside job to figure that out. We're not walking around in the world doing nothing in connection with other people. We are connected to other people, but there are those moments where you can save someone's life with a conversation from coming from your inner guidance. And the inside job is to know the difference. Here's your job.
to
Should you
know the
choose to
difference.
accept it?
Right. Right. The
Am I
wisdom to
coming
know the
from,
difference.
I
There
need to
it
do
is.
this because I got to do this, or am I quieting myself because as much as I want to do this and I feel like doing this, I have been here too many times, you know.
Right.
So that's amazing.
Right. But to take that as a message that it was, like there's a book, who was it? Nate Silver. Nate Silver wrote a book called The Signal and the Noise, and it's about, doing statistics and predicting, events and stuff like that. It's a book about probability, but, that is the sort of discernment we're talking about. Like what is signal and what is noise? And that day, for me, that was not line noise. That was line signal. That was that had a meaning and a message that I discerned. And, as many years later as it is, like like that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
And I talk to, I mean, every single client that I work with knows this. And it used to be something that was sort of a joke. And then I started to realize it's true. Have your computer, your phone, your electronics are people too. We probably spend more time with our phone. And when I have told this to many a client who's getting very frustrated that we'll be in the middle of a Zoom session and it'll just start to glitch or something. And they immediately say, we, when things are really glitching and it's either protecting you or it's showing you that you're moving to a different vibration and your electronics have to catch up to your higher vibration. So, a lot of times when something goes wrong, one of my favorite expressions is rejection is protection.
Hmm.
Sometimes when like if that piece of paper didn't have the word don't on it, could have come out all crumbled up. It could have whatever the thing was.
Right.
The universe is always trying to help us, always trying to help us. And at the same time, when if sometimes I say we're about to have the biggest breakthrough if the computer glitches or if we can't, what are you saying? I can't hear you anymore. It's like, wow, our vibration has moved up a level and our electronics have to follow us. And it just, I don't care how crazy it sounds because, you
No,
know,
it's
we,
it fits it exactly with that, that thing that I keep, I'm saying a lot lately. I've said it a couple of times on the podcast. It's like, what is trying to arise here? Like, it's so easy to, I mean, like we've all had situations where you're trying to talk to someone and like, the
oh yeah.
signal breaks up or whatever, and it's like, what is trying to arise, what's trying to emerge here? It may be like, can you just entertain that for a second? In other words, like you could be so like, I know what I'm doing and I'm trying to do this and this won't let me. And I'm like, you can have that. You can have that. It's painful, to know that you're right and the universe is stopping you, like very painful. Very pain, it's like, so can you breathe into it and say, like, even if the lesson is, well, I think this conversation can wait 15 minutes. Like you
Yeah.
get a little lesson in just peace and quiet for some reason. Like like if you could do that, if you can breathe and bend in with it, it just feels better than being the oak that it's like, I'm going to stand here in the hurricane and I'm not going to move. And well, that oak gets knocked over. And you could do that all day long.
And I love the saying, can you entertain the idea of, you know, it's a, can you entertain the idea that what I'm going to say right now is not the most important thing in the world? And can you entertain the idea that, if someone is like, will you marry, like, and the phone clicks out, like, you know,
But that's never
was he,
that's never it. It's usually me going off on some self-indulgent tangent, and the universe is doing me, and more importantly, that other person a favor. It's like, oh God, Mark was just, you know, he was just off on his own with that conversation. And then the
but
phone cut out.
it's even the case with like, if someone's going to be like, I'm coming back to you. Will you marry me when I come back? It's like, again, Tammy said number one, you can't lose anything that's yours and you can't have anything that's not.
Mhm.
If that, if you can lose a marriage proposal by a phone call that breaks up,
Yeah, I'll still be here when T-Mobile decides to cooperate, right? Like, yeah. Also, like I wasn't just like, no, if you don't say yes in the next 10 minutes, I'm never going to see you again. Like, I'll be here.
right?
I
But
love
that's
you.
how we live life. That's
That's
how
how
we
we live
live
life.
life, where
With it,
we
it's
live life in so much fear.
clinging desperately to our picture of what it should be, what it should have been, what it must be, what it will be. And just like that's a little bit the miraculous is just like, this like God, like what humans make their plans and God laughs, right?
Oh yeah,
Man,
hysterically, I'm
man
sure.
proposes, God disposes, right? Many plans, whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what, like, I have a story that's, but I don't know if you want to. I always find the story of how we both sort of wound up having some miraculous stories that landed us in jobs. And I can tell mine, and if you want to tell yours next, like I have,
The reason I want to tell mine is because I think yours is pretty amazing, and mine is sort of a little something for your back pocket. So
okay,
because I think that yours will overshadow mine. I want to build to yours because I think you've got a really good story. I know what you.
okay,
So like the little thing for your back pocket is, um, if you want to make a cold call, do it in the afternoon after lunch on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And then I'll
I
explain.
love this.
Okay.
I love this. I love this advice.
So you think to yourself, like, I want to, like, and whatever it is, it's like, I'm a writer and I want to talk to someone at Random House about the possibility of writing a novel. Okay. I'm an actor and I want to talk to Steven Spielberg or, like whatever. I want to talk to Steven Spielberg's office for whatever. Okay. Like you're thinking about like, I'm here and they're like way up here. Right. And that's how you're approaching it. So I'm just saying a good way to get the ladder against the right window is make the cold call on a in the afternoon after lunch on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And here's what I mean. Mondays and Fridays can be rush days. like people coming back from the weekend, they got this pile of stuff to do on their plate. Friday, a lot of times people are just, and especially in the afternoon, people are just, you know, they're trying to get out of there. They're like, if I can get out like 3:30, I can pick up the kids and we can be on the road before the, whatever. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are those meat and potato days that you're just like, everybody has them. And the little experience that I had working in an office is that after lunch, if I could take a nap, I would, right? And a lot of people feel that way. So, like, I'm at my desk, and what I would do at my desk would be like organize 200 files, on my computer that like I wanted to add like a letter in front of them so that they would all be alphabetized or something like that. And just like, okay, this is like, it's boring, it's tedious, it's not going to require a lot of thought energy, and I'm going to do this. And certainly not like make or break, right? So you're doing this thing, and then the phone rings and you answer it. And it's like, and some bright voiced, nice person on the other side, they're not in your world of like the day to day. They're like, oh, is this Steven Spielberg's office? And, someone's like, they're doing alphabetizing files. Like, yeah, this is it. This is, you reached the right office. Like, I don't mean to take up too much of your time, but I just wonder if I could ask you one or two questions. Most people at that point, first of all, if you're being really nice, they're going to say, like, sure. But second of all, they're in the office, they're doing something really boring and useless. And then it's like, you mean I can be brilliant and have a 15-minute conversation with someone and they'll really appreciate it, and I can get paid for this? Heck yeah, I'm
Mhm.
gonna do that. So all this preface, like I made several phone calls. So it's like in writing, I write dummies books, the yellow and black cover, right? The four dummies. I've written, a bunch of those books. I got my first book because I called Wiley Publishing and said, I'm interested in writing a dummies book. And then the operator like puts me over here. And then someone eventually puts me to the main person, like the person who would eventually be my boss's boss's boss. Okay. Like
Wow.
my project editor has a boss, and then her boss, right, would be, and I'm talking to her, and I didn't know that, but she was very nice, really nice. And I just, it's like, I was just interested in writing a dummies book on probability. That was the topic that I was interested in. And so I was just wondering if I could ask you a few questions about that. And she's like, sure, and she's like, well, let me see. If you were going to write a book, I think that that's a book that so and so would do. So at the end of this conversation, I could hook you up with that editor, and that would be the right desk to be at. I'm like, great, thank
Wow. That's
Great.
farther than you probably thought you would get right
Oh,
there.
way further than I got. Like, and you think to yourself, you're trembling, and you think to yourself, the person's going to say, like, you're nobody and I'm everything. Goodbye and never call me back again. You really do think that, like that Steven Spielberg's office would do that, or, Random House or
I
some.
mean, this is a huge corporation, the
It's
dummies, like, I
right.
mean, I mean,
And
those
corporations made
books,
of like people who go to work every day and just are like, but again, like Tuesday at 2:30 in the afternoon, like just like kind of like, I'm happy to talk with you in conjunction with my job. Like, this is what we do. And also, the other side of it, too, is you have to think to yourself, when I wanted to write a dummies book, I thought, like, this is like the unattainable thing that I could never be able to do. But from their perspective, every single one of their editors has like 12 or 15 projects, has to develop 12 or 15 projects a year, like whatever the number would be. And then they need to come up with something that could sell. And then they need to find someone who could write it, like qualified, but also will actually
a
put the
lot more complicated than you would think. Yeah.
right. So
You're looking at it as this huge opportunity, and they're looking at it that they need things to get done,
right, I need to fill like we need to fill a slot. So like if I'm if this guy isn't a total flake, if he could actually do this. And then, of course, that's kind of what happened is like we might get him to write like 12 or 15 books over the course of the next like 10, 15, 20 years,
which
right?
has happened.
Which has happened. So she was so nice about it. She said, I would send you to this person because, that would be her purview. Do you have any other questions? And I said, yeah, just can you tell me about what it entails? And she said, well, we have a basic structure. I can send that to you. Give me your email address. I can send you the structure of 6 questions that we ask on a prospective topic. Like, so the questions are generally like, well, what do you want to write? Who's the audience?
It's almost like she's giving you the answers to the interview, which is really weird, you
Right.
know?
But the thing is, the interview isn't there to trick anybody. The interview is not there
No, I
to,
get it, but it's
like
just,
we're going to ask you, like how many, I'm going to show you a jar of jelly beans, and if you can't tell me the exact number, like, sorry, next, boom, hole in the floor open. But that's what you think when you're trying to move
of course.
people. And it isn't that complicated. So I say like make the phone call to that person. I've done it like three or four times. I got some of my first writing gigs that way, just by calling someone and saying like, I'd like to write for you. What might that look like? And if you call at the right time when they are looking not to do the work that's on their desk and just have an interesting conversation and you're nice, always be nice, ABN, always
Mhm.
be nice, right? So that's my if anybody can take that and into the world, and the last thing I would say is, if you're listening to this and if you're like, oh, I would really like to, okay, like I'm gonna do like, I would really love to talk to my favorite writer, and I know she works at such and such a university, or I'd really love to talk to this sculptor that I know, and I think I could find, like, write the email, like make the phone call, like you're probably not going to get shut down in the most horrible way. You're either probably going to be like, "Oh, I really can't help you,"
Well, give us the punchline, especially about yours, because I know you
Mhm.
got the job. I mean,
Oh
you
yeah, yeah,
got
there
like,
is that. I did get the job. I did get the job.
but
Right. No,
but it was
right.
but it
Was
even
I
was more
very naive?
miraculous because
Right. Very
you
deluded.
started out wanting to do probability with for dummies, but they even found a better fit for
That's
you.
right. Okay, yeah, you're right. Thank you. Thank you.
Come on, this is
You know my
amazing, this
story better than
story.
I do, right? So as it turned out, I wasn't able. And this was completely. I did the whole proposal thing, which was like a 25-page proposal and includes perspective table of contents and a partial chapter. So it took time, and I did it all, but I sent it in, and then they had told me the good news about this was that they said, A, we don't have that title. We don't yet have that book. But B, we've decided we're going to write it. Like we've decided that we want that title. So you're coming in at just the right moment. What happened was there were 3 such proposals, and they gave it to the woman, I believe she's a woman, yes, who wrote Statistics for Dummies, which is completely appropriate because she was a known quantity and that was her area of expertise. And now she was like one step to one side from that. But when I got the phone call telling me, the editor said, I'm sorry, but we're going with one of the other writers. She made it a point to stay on the phone for quite a while and said, but we really, really liked your proposal. It was very professional. We really think you could write a dummies book, and we're just trying to find a fit. So
Wow, it's amazing.
so what happened was I had written a lot of logic puzzles. And so in looking over my resume, what was, the word that kept arising on my resume was logic, 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 logic. And then when they decided they wanted to write logic for dummies, they said, wait a minute, what about that logic guy with logic all over his resume? And that was my first that was my first book, and it was a far better fit than probability would have been. Probability, I would have probably had to get a co-writer to help me with that. In fact, I had a
Right.
co-writer potentially picked out. But logic, I was like, no, I got this. I got this. So that was my story, and I really like your story, and I want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about, the way that these stories sort of, I don't know, weave together is that both of us sort of were a little bit thinking, how do we move to the next level? When you talk to me about getting, I mean, now, I mean, you have written so many dummies books, plus so many other books. Mark has also written a beautiful spiritual book. It's on Audible. It's called The Age of Awakening. It's amazing. And you have written puzzle books and, on and on and on. And also, you're an amazing fiction writer,
Mhm.
um,
And
as well
I'm
as,
working on a Chinese grammar because I want to
oh
learn
yeah,
grammar better.
stand-up comedy routine. I mean, you are just doing so many amazing things. And sometimes it is, you're much more, let me make the phone call, where I am, let me not make that phone call. I am really loath to make these huge moves. Like, we talked about, I think last week or the week before, about, the way that I wound up as a decorative painter was to become a great waitress, which seems counterintuitive, but that's more my speed. I'm not as direct or as confident as you are. It's just the way it is. It doesn't, it's
Or
not good or bad.
foolhardy,
Just
foolhardy. We could say that. Like that,
you're not,
I'll run blind into traffic and just like hope that the lights change, and that's not
and
good.
they always do. Yeah,
No,
but
no,
the thing
no, no,
is, like,
no, 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 they don't. No, no children don't run out into traffic and
no,
expect
no, no.
lights to change. Okay,
Yeah, no, not for the better anyway. But
right.
but the thing is that I've seen you take risks before that are
Calculated risk is
wonderful and
good.
enormous, and I'm in shock that you'll do those things. And those things have also benefited me in the past too. Where, you know, being with you while you're doing something that's sort of courageous like that. I've had a different experience of the miraculous. Part of my experience was, you know, the way I sort of fell into decorative painting, and we talked about that before. But the next phase of my life, it's like 15, almost 20 years later, right, was getting to the point where r- decorative painting was wrapping up for me. And I had, from when I was younger, I started therapy in my 20s and thought about being a therapist, but it just, no college, not really. Yeah, at a certain point in my life, it was, the idea of going back to schooling, and it wouldn't have just been getting an undergraduate, degree. It would be getting a master's, even just to to do therapy, and you know, to be a therapist. And it just wasn't, the change wasn't appealing. I liked, I wasn't that I loathed my job as a decorative painter. I was just I mean, as you get older, you start to think to yourself, I love so many parts of this job, but what is the thing that I love to do most in the world? Talk, 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 talk. So,
Mhm.
and once you sell a job, what are you doing? None of. You're not talking.
Standing on
You're
a
painting a
ladder,
wall.
right?
Yeah, you're painting. And there was a frustration in that for me. So I started to hear about the idea of something called life coaching. And I decided to, you know, go the route and say, I know I've heard there are certificate programs to be life coaches. And that was like, okay, like 18 months or, 2 years to do something, that's doable. I'm going to take I've really never taken the sort of traditional path to getting someplace. And this was like, I'm going to do this. So at the time, there weren't as many life coaching, you know, programs as there are now. And I sort of said, if I'm going to do this, I've never done anything like this, never gone to school. I picked NYU because I love Manhattan. I love New York City. We were living in Jersey. And it was sort of once a week on a Saturday for, I think it was a 2-year program at the time, something around that. And it wasn't a matter of you have to apply, you just pay the money and get in. It's a class. I think there were like 17 or 18 people in the class. So it wasn't a huge program, but it was expensive. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to do this the right way. I'm going to become a life coach. And I think it was because you had taken a life coaching class.
That's right. I did at San Francisco State. I actually did the whole
It gave me the idea.
seven course program. It lasted a year. You could get it done in a year. But yeah, that's right. I sure did. I did it. That let
Right.
me
So,
know that, well, these things exist. It's like a certificate program exists.
and I was like, woo, okay, this is fantastic. So you were on the West Coast at the time. I was on the East Coast. And I decided to go to NYU, and you sign up and you start going to the class. I think there were about 17, 16, 17, 18 people in the class. And I would say 90% of them were sent there by their companies, like HR sent them to get an extra skill set for their job. So it wasn't that, there were people in the class that had, master's degrees, a doctorates, and I was sort of like, I remember they were going around the room and just giving their credentials and why they were there. And I was sort of, we're sitting in sort of a semicircle in a class, sitting in the middle of the class. And I was like hearing, I have a PhD in this and a master's in that, and a doctorate in this and this and that. And I was like, without even knowing it, I don't know if this ever happens to you, but it's like tears were coming out of my eyes, but I had no attachment to them. I was just like, I mean, the humiliation was sort of like, I dropped out of high school and I have a, sort of pieced together high school degree. And it was just, I was like counting down and I'm like, oh, here we go. And so anyway, so I get through the first year of the class and I didn't understand that, we get the syllabus. Now, this is how naive I am about school. So we get the syllabus for the class, and I noticed I've read most of the books on the syllabus, but the ones I didn't read, I read before the class started because I thought you needed, when you get a syllabus from a class, you need to read all the books before you start the class. I mean,
You're
yeah,
you're a better
I
student
didn't,
than,
I
most.
did. So
Right.
I was like, okay, I did that. And as I'm going, they're like, okay, no, we're all going to read this week. And I thought to myself, well, didn't we all do that already? And the teacher was like, I was definitely trying to overachieve in the class because it meant so much to me. But at the end of the year, it was, and at the time I was going to therapy. I kind of I thought I'm going to become a life coach. Let me get back into going to therapy. And I picked a therapist and had some, was just going weekly, thought to myself, I'm going to really get into this. I'm doing this thing. And at the, as the end of the year approached, the teacher said to the class, all of you this summer should intern. And a few of us had said, well, we're not going to intern this summer. We're going to keep going. I don't want to let this thing, I don't need a summer off. I'm going to keep, I'm going to finish up. And they were like, I think it's a really good idea for you to not go to school this summer, Tammy. Like, why don't you go and, intern this summer, Tammy? And I'm like, but I was like, that's odd. Well, so I'm going to therapy and I'm talking to my therapist, and of course I'm talking to my best friend about, that was an odd thing. Like, should I not take classes this summer? Should I intern? Where would I intern? This and that, and the other thing. So within that same week, I called and said, no, I'm going to take classes this summer. And I call up NYU, and they're like, oh, by the way, you can't take classes here anymore because we've turned this into a master's program and you don't qualify. As a matter of fact, out of like the 17, 18, 19 people, you're the only one who doesn't qualify because you don't have a bachelor's.
Right.
So
And I just
you're
wanted to
no
interject
longer
here that how you mean, like, in other words, you almost want to say, like, you mean if I had just been an art history major, or if I had just been a biochemistry major, or if I had just been a, you know,
anything.
anything, literally like accumulate 120 credits in something entirely irrelevant, I would be qualified. But I am like, there's something a little bit wrong with that. And I remember
Yeah, well,
hearing that.
but the thing is wrong or like
Flip the
wrong
pancake,
or
baby.
miraculous.
Right. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
so
right.
I was like, and it's like, well, is there any way to be grandfathered into this? I mean, I've taken half the course, I paid you half the money. Do I get my money back? No, 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 no. So I was,
Oh, you. Oh, isn't that sweet? Hey, Audrey, she thinks she might get her money back. I'm just
yeah.
sorry.
So it was a
It's
really
colleges
weird
are a business.
moment.
Right.
Yeah. And I was sort of like, I don't know whether I should be upset or, I mean, I was sort of numb and but I, trucking along to my therapy, and I didn't seem to, and because of the fact that I drove directly past my best friend's house on the way home from therapy every week. I called her almost every week on the way home from my therapy. And I was going to a therapist, and my very close friend is not someone to say, she's just really, really positive and supportive. And I was telling her, oh, I talked to my therapist about this thing, and like I'm not going to be able to go back to school. And my therapist gave me some kind of advice, and she said to me, blurted out, I really don't like your therapist. I think she gives you really bad advice. And I don't like I don't usually say this to her. I'm like, no, you don't. I would say this to people, but why don't you get a real therapist's opinion about what you're thinking about here? And I'm like, because I think it was like more of a nurse practitioner or a not, but some and I said, well, where would you find a real, what are you talking about, real therapist? She said, there's the, I've seen someone that like that. Have you ever heard of the radio show The Positive Mind? And I was like, no, yeah, I've heard of it. And it was Armand DeMille, who's one of the most famous therapists, in our country, at the time. And he had a radio show on uh, BAI, I think it was
For like 30
for
years.
30 years. And she said, why don't you go get a real evaluation from him and see, like, first of all, I don't even know if you need to be in therapy or you just doing this. There was a bunch of reasons, but why don't you go talk to him? And he's in Manhattan. And I was like, she was so adamant about it and she was so persuasive. And she also didn't give suggestions like that very often. So I really took it seriously. And I went to, made an appointment to see Armand. And Armand it was like the DeMille Center in Manhattan, one of the biggest therapy centers, 57th Street. Like, you know, many, many therapists work there. And he was sort of the director and he did the radio show. Um, and you would meet with him as an intake, and then he would put you with a therapist. Okay, I figure that's fair. So I go up, and now my therapist is like $75 a session, and he was at the time $300 for the session. So and the trip into New York and the trip back, and so I went into his office after filling out pages and pages of paperwork. And I went into his office and, hi, I'm Tammy. He said, yeah, I'm Ron DeMille. I'm like, yeah. And then I did a little research on him and I thought he's pretty interesting. This guy's like got, the radio show and it's a big deal. And I'm like, wow, this is a big deal. I'm in this amazing office. I mean, I was in somebody's like back room in their house in therapy in New Jersey. So I I said to him, like, I'm here and I want to, ask some questions about whatever the problem was at the time. And we were talking to me for, no, you got to realize these are the things that I kind of have a thing with therapy, like the 50-minute hour, I have a, issue with that, but I was like, this is Armand DeMille. And I knew who he was. I said, like, I'm here for this reason. He said, no, you're not. And I was like, no, I really am. And he's like, no, that's not why you're here. And I said, well, I need to know a little bit about this or about, I was asking him a question about something. He's like, it just doesn't feel right to me. And I said, well, I don't know why I'm here then. He said, you know why you're here. And I said, well, I really don't. So maybe you can help me out here. And he said, I don't know, this is a tough one. I don't, I said, I'm looking for some answers and maybe some therapy and this and that. He said, I don't think you need therapy. And I was like, we've talked for all of 8 minutes now. And I'm like, okay. I got, 40 something minutes left. And I said, well, what am I here for? And he said, well, why don't you tell me a little bit more about yourself? And I said, well, I'm doing this and that, and I'm trying to figure out whether to change careers or not. And it didn't come up somehow that I was trying to be a life coach, which was very odd. So he said to me, I just have such a strange feeling that you're not here and you don't need therapy. I've looked at your intake. He said, I don't know what you're here for, but why don't you come back tomorrow? Go home tonight, write journal and write me a letter and try and figure out why you've come to me. And I'm thinking, why am I going to write you a letter about why I'm coming to you when I'm here sitting in your office right now? But he's sort of a very imposing man. And you were like, okay, I'll do that. And I'm thinking, in my mind, I'm thinking, and come back tomorrow and pay you another $300. I don't, I think I said that. And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. So I go out to pay my $300 to the person in the office, having gotten absolutely nothing from someone who's supposed to be a genius. And I said to the woman at the desk, I'm here, I'm my $300 and he wants me to come back tomorrow. And she said, oh, no, 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 honey. He doesn't, all he does is see people once and then he puts them with a therapist. That's his job. Like he runs the thing. He's not doing therapy anymore. He's running the office. And I said, well, either I misunderstood or I'm supposed to be coming back here tomorrow. So she goes to pick up the phone to call him and say, there must be a mistake. She thinks she's coming back to see you tomorrow. Who is she seeing tomorrow? And the phone rings at the front desk. And she goes, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And she hangs up the phone and she says, he'll see you tomorrow. I said, that's what I just said. So I go home that night and it's late. I'm exhausted. I'm supposed to write some kind of a letter about why I think I'm there. And I think this is some kind of in-depth move on his part therapeutically, but I'm exhausted, so I don't write anything. And I thought, sure, $600 in 2 days, I got this, like, so I went back and the next day he said, I've been thinking a lot about you since yesterday. I thought, well, thank you. And I said, no, I really do think I'm here for what I came for. I think that I need some clarification on like maybe do I need medication? Do I need therapist? Do I need this or that or the other thing? He's like, none of this is what you're here for. He said, we are missing it here somehow. I don't know what he said. I said, you have known me like not even 2 days. What else, like, what are we doing here? He said, well, what do you want to do for a living? I said, well, I'm a decorative painter. I'm working on this and I'm working on that. He said, is that what you want to do for a living? I said, well, there is this other thing. I'm going to school. Well, actually, I found out I'm not going to school for to be a life coach. And he was like, ah, that's what you're doing here. I said, what? He said, you're becoming a life coach here. I said, here where? At the DeMille Center in Manhattan with no experience as a life coach? He said, yes, that's what we're doing here. And I said,
I just love this story, I must say.
but I mean, it's like, he said, when can you start? And I'm like, start what? He said, being a life coach at the DeMille Center in Manhattan. Here we go, right here. I said, you don't know me. He was like, I trust my instincts. He said, I knew from the second you walked in the door, there was a reason that you were here. And then he kind of looked up and he said, isn't that the reason? And I mean, literally. And he said, yeah. And then he starts talking to me again. And I'm like, yes, he said, well, you're going to have to intern for about a month and then we'll start giving you clients. And I thought, is this happening? And he said, you're going to work with, our number one therapist here. Her name's Aura, who's she's amazing. She's going to train you, work with you, and, you know, give you some clients to work with that you won't be getting paid for about a month or so, whatever the amount of time is that he said, I don't remember. And that's how we'll get started. And since I was off for the summer and from school, and I was not turning down an opportunity like this, I was like, great. He said, okay, so you'll be here not this Monday, but the following Monday. And you'll start with Aura and she'll start training you. And I was like, sure. Now, this is the kicker of the whole thing. I go home and I call my best friend Beth and I say, you are not going to believe this story. And she was like, no, I don't believe the story. But it did happen. And we all, know how 2 weeks from that point, I went into the city. I think actually I had met Aura the first day. And then I went into the city and went to the DeMille Center, and it looked like they were having a party, but it looked like a very sad party. I was like, people were sort of,
Mhm.
I know, I don't know if you know this part.
What about that?
And I'm waiting to meet with Aura, and we're going to get started. And people are crying. And I went up to the desk, I said, and Aura comes out, and she's like, Armand passed away.
Oh my gosh,
But he did say to me, make sure Tammy still keeps working here.
that's incredible.
And then from that moment, Aura was an enormous mentor and did exactly what he had said, started giving me, clients that I did as an internship, and then moved me into getting paid for clients. And the rest is history. But if I hadn't listened to my friend who said, go into the city, I don't like your therapist, go get some real help, gotten dropped from the program at NYU. If I hadn't gone right then, 2 weeks from that day, he was no longer alive.
Wow. Yes.
And then in the first 6 months when they were transitioning the show, The Positive Mind, um, I was actually on the show, on the radio show. And I mean, Aura was like encouraged me to go see who was, they were transitioning to somebody else and said, why don't you see if you can get on the show? You're our first life coach. And it worked out. I mean, so you want to talk about
Right. Magic,
the miraculous?
miracles, whichever word. I
There's no
really,
way.
it's his miracles. This is miracles. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't make this up. I mean, this man, I only met him twice, the two times, the 2 days. And for whatever reason, I wasn't grandfathered into NYU, but he grandfathered me in, and Aura did. And we worked and are still, you know, connected to this day.
Right. And for many years worked on a daily basis.
She was, she's was and always will be my mentor, and gave me many, many clients. We worked together with on some clients where I did some coaching and she did the therapy, and you know, couldn't ask for anybody a more perfect fit as a mentor than she was and always will be.
Truly. Truly.
So people who say like, now this was what like the wormhole in the universe, and I wasn't even going for it. At least when you were calling about the writing the dummies book, I wasn't.
I had a
There
picture
was
in my head of what
nothing
I
about
might
this.
want to do. Right.
No one in their right mind, after not finishing the coaching class, could imagine getting hired by one of the most famous therapists in the country for on the spot. And, but this was the way Armand moved. He trusted himself.
Yeah.
And I vowed to not disappoint him. I tried to just really live into the kind of work that I already had a belief system of exactly, like of what I wanted to do as a coach. And that was, well over 10
And
years
you've
ago
been
now,
doing coaching for my whole life,
for
right?
my whole life.
For your whole life. Well, same difference, right? Give or
Same
take,
difference.
give or take a year.
Mhm.
Your life and my life are pretty, railroad tracks kind of going together for most of the time, right? So, and you've always had this gift of just simply being able to pull the thing out and name it that I don't see and people around me don't see. And you just see it. You just see the thing, pull it out, name it, say, here's what's really going on here. Here's what really needs to happen. And everyone's like, yeah, that's right. We're all on board. Yeah, we're on board.
It was, and just working with someone as intuitive also as I like the entire framework of the way it happened just kept getting more and more and more and more miraculous. There wasn't, um, it was one of those things that you can't make this up. You can't
You can't fake
figure it out
it.
in
You
any other way.
can't in advance. Like,
Yeah, it
here's what
just
I think I'll do. I think I'll like this is the path that I'll take. Like, there's no path. There's no from here to there. There's some, you step in a box and poof, and you're like somewhere else.
right. And so many things around me doing that. The way that I moved to Manhattan was the same kind of thing. Like, oh, maybe it would make sense since I'm working in Manhattan now to live in Manhattan. And then an opportunity presented itself. And then I was like, I don't think I'm gonna be doing decorative painting anymore. And I had a van and I thought, oh, I bought a van from a friend. And the exact week I thought I could sell the van, the I talked to my friend and he was like, "Hey, I'm looking to buy a van." So all of these different synchronicities kept happening and happening around, sort of buoying me up to be a life coach. Like more than it wasn't just, you know, a shift in my mind. It was miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle to get one to the place where they can have a life that would never make sense in any other in n- the amount of time to get to work your way up to getting to be working at someplace like the DeMille Center. It that could be something you could start in your 20s and be in your 40s trying to get that job.
Right. With a PhD and a very formidable resume. And that resume is being stacked upon like, 50 others just like it from
Yeah,
very educated, trained people. Right.
right. And so this is, and if you anybody who knows me knows this is one of 100 stories like this, which we're not going to get into. But I mean, stories of like, going to, get a job when I was younger as a makeup artist at Barney's in New York and walking in with like the idea of just getting a very simple job behind a makeup counter and walking out with the, you know, counter manager's position for a job I'm never have done other than working behind a makeup counter. Like there's just things where it's like it doesn't, almost every job I ever applied for, if I was a waitress, I'd be managing by the end of the first month I was there. It just those types of things repeatedly happened to me in my life
Right.
for
But
no
the,
apparent reason.
the right stuff, whatever that is that they
Yeah, it
coined the
wasn't
phrase
me.
for
It wasn't
astronauts, whatever
me.
the right, right, right,
Right.
right.
It
But
wasn't
that
it wasn't me doing it.
it was a something again, like it's like you can look at it down here as like, oh, lucky you, and that might be the kind of word that someone, like, oh, well, aren't you lucky? Like with some jealousy, with some, whatever. And then in the middle, it's like, wow, that was really good fortune. But like to go up here and say like that was miraculous, I think there's a lot of
Yeah,
way to look
that
at it.
was something else. That
Right,
was something else where you're supposed to, there's another reason for it. I probably never know it in this lifetime.
right.
But there's so many amazing things like, and maybe we can switch gears a little bit at this
I
point,
don't know,
but
but no, no, not yet, because
oh, okay.
the place that I was taking this, it's like really like I'm thinking about anybody who's watching this, and I know there are like these kinds of stories where it's like, I like, okay, like I can think of a person I know who really wanted a baby. We know this person, and it just that like it fell into their lap, right? And that,
Sure.
right, someone who I know, like, I have a friend who he literally went on, he decided at some point he wanted a partner, now a husband,
Oh, right.
and he literally went on, said like, I'm going to keep going on dates. I'm going to go on hundreds of dates until I finally meet that person. So like,
Wow.
and both of those, like from the sort of like, I want a baby, but I don't have a partner. Bam. Like, baby here, like in your arms. I did nothing and it happened. to a person saying, I want a partner and I'm going to drink lattes till I drop, till I till
Yeah.
till I turn into a latte, right?
Yes.
Over and over and over again and have the same conversation until I meet that person. Like it can be I did absolutely nothing and the universe just provided to I did all this and the universe provided. Like you with a job, me with a book. I know there are people out there either um with a story like that and here's how it happened. Here's how it came down for me, which would be inspirational. But I know there's other people out there who are like, I've been waiting at the door. I've been waiting in the alcove for my chance. And this is now like, I'm going to move. I'm going to take this. So I'd love to hear anything that people who are watching
Right. And
say.
it is interesting is that you can't quite, I hear people say like, the hustle and the grind, and you gotta put the time in and you gotta be consistent and all that. None of that is bad advice. Like
Mhm.
there's a truth to all of it. But the flip side of that is that in some ways the universe has a plan for you.
Right.
Are you, and if it's something is a plan that you are wanting to participate in, to some degree, when you put your head down and you do like the 300 coffee dates, that's one beautiful way of saying I'm just gonna this is something I want, I deserve, I know it can be mine. And that's a way of putting your head down and making it happen, and also allowing it to happen, because another person might say, I could go on 300 days and I'm never going to meet somebody. They had to have the faith that that person was out there.
Right.
So that like that the
Right.
thing about it wasn't what I want to take out of like the idea is that it's the hustle and the pain and the grind. No, it was the faith that if I have to go out, I'm sure he didn't really go out on 300 days. Maybe it was 70 or 40 or
It was a
50 or
large number. I know it was
right.
a
But his
large number.
faith was so,
Right.
it was like, I deserve this.
Right.
I want this in my life and I'm going to go for it. Whereas sometimes for me, the consistency happened in a way that I wasn't so aware of, is that I was life coaching in the supermarket. I was life coaching every friend. I was life coaching. I was at people's houses painting their walls while they were sitting down in a chair. I mean, there were times when they were crying to me about the loss of, I remember one specific one where crying to me about the loss of their mother. And I took a week to paint the room of the house, and doing decorative painting, you're doing much more intricate work. And they just sat there and they were like talking to me about the grief they were going through over losing their
Mm.
mother. And I was coaching and coaching, and I was like, I was getting paid for it, in the sense I was getting paid to paint the room while I was coaching. But so that was my consistency. We don't always, like, people have a judgment about you're not being consistent enough and you're not putting in the time. And it's like, when you love something, when something is, you were writing puzzles long before, though, like you wrote all those logic puzzles
When I was
in
a
those
kid. When
magazines.
I was a kid. Oh yeah, before. Right. Right.
Yeah, and
And
when you were a kid, you
right.
had a syndicated
Right.
column
And I think
when
I
you were
think
a
the
kid.
thing is I think the thing is also like I like the line that Steve Martin uses, would you know the line I'm talking about, which is
Oh, I love it.
like his line, people would come to him and say, like, how can I be as successful as you? I'm a comedian, I'm an actor, whatever. Like, should I get an agent? Should I move to Hollywood? Should I take class? Whatever.
Exactly.
And his answer was always like, be so good they can't ignore you. That's what you have to do. And I think that when you're talking about like the the person that who had the baby was I mean, he was a lawyer and then he was started a law practice. And it was his plan at the beginning of like law school was, well, I'm going to go law school, but eventually I'll find a partner, and then I'm going to do the law, and I'm going to find a partner. And like it was like the thing that never materialized was the partner. And then finally it was sort of like am I crazy? Like I'm making more money than I ever thought I'd make. He's ended up being very successful in a certain, field, has a great place in San Francisco. It's like, and finally just adopted a daughter. And that was his path. And it was like, you know, he could have waited for another 10 years to be like, well, I have to meet the right person and we have to be settled, but they also have to like be, you know, wanting children of their own and whatever. And he's just like he just cut it. He just cut the Gordian knot and was like I can afford that. Like, hey, I can afford a nanny, right? Like while I go to work,
Right.
make the donuts. And now I haven't had a chance to meet her, but I think she's like 6 or 7 now. It's like like if you get a baby, what happens is they get older and they grow.
Yeah,
He's
they
been
do.
doing this now for 6, 7 years, so it's crazy.
No, but the thing is like the component that when when a lot of times people say, well, find something you love and make a business out of it. That's one way. Or but it's like when you find something you love, you are gonna be doing it anyway. You're
Right.
gonna be giving it away. You're gonna be, you don't even know that you're, I've had people say, oh, the way, you become, you know, like this podcast will be successful if you do, we joke about the 14 things to do that, have a successful podcast. It's like there, yes and no. It's like do something that matters to you and see where life takes you. Like there is a certain amount of, you know, let go, let God. I mean, like there's a certain point where you have control over your own actions. And what sometimes people call like you're not putting in the hustle or the grind or the consistency that you should means that there's a feeling of negativity about it. Like, oh, this is so hard and unbearable. But no, at no time in my life was painting something for someone or coaching somebody in something, was that ever a burden? My clients who are just, I have amazing clients. Probably, I can't think of a client that I have that wouldn't be a friend if they weren't a client. And the good thing for my friends are they get free life coaching
Yes.
because I
And
don't
brother.
have an
And
off
brother.
button with this. And brother, but
I've
I don't
lived
have
no
an
longer
off
than
button with
anybody
this.
else. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same way that, if I'm very into, still love painting and decorating. Like if I move in with you, you're going to get free painting and decorating. It's just how it goes.
And
It's
and
not
jewels on the
something
walls and
uh,
jewels on the wall, right? Like literally.
and all over your furniture
And all
and
of
all
the
that kind of,
right.
yeah. So the thing is that when people are like, well, you're not being consistent. If a lot of times if people aren't being consistent with something that, and they're not getting success, it's not because they're not being consistent. It's because they don't like it enough.
I like the word readiness. And like it's a what is that? Because I've been trying to think, I've said that to people and they're like, what do you mean by readiness? And I'm like, it is not a word that's easy to define. But
I love this.
I will say that, you know, my friend, the lawyer, was ready to be a father. And my
And
friend
your friend who
who
was
wanted a partner was like ready. And they were both ready. The readiness was in them.
right.
And then they expressed that in different ways. Like one expressed it just as, I'm just going to look into like if I can, it's not that easy to adopt a baby when you're just a single guy. Like there's just,
And
there's
also he was gay. Was he
he's gay and
also
he's
gay?
like gay, unpartnered, you know.
Right, right. It's
Like it's
not
not
exactly
that.
the
I mean,
easiest
San Francisco is
demographic.
an easier place, but and then my friend, I feel like my friend who expressed his readiness, like another person who's not ready. Okay, so another person could say, I know someone who went on 100 dates and found a partner. I'm going to do that, but this person's not ready, whatever that is. That
Exactly.
person could go on 1,000.
Bingo, Ringo. There you go.
Right,
That's what I
right.
was talking about.
I've gone on 20,000 dates and I'm still haven't met that person. And it's like, you know, So what is that readiness thing? I don't know what that is, but the universe seems to.
Yeah, and also I think it's, I guess because of the conversation we had last week where I really had a lot of deep thoughts about this, deep thoughts with, I know most people
Yes, yes.
don't know the reference from Saturday Night Live, right?
Oh.
The old, of Saturday Night Live from a while ago, deep thoughts. When I was watching a coach who was saying the reason you're not successful is because they said the word lazy, which, you know, uh, like I don't believe in laziness. I don't believe that anybody's lazy. I believe that people are in, that when we are stymied or stopped on something, if you can either there's really not a lot of interest there, or there's an interest but there's a trauma or a fear or something that's getting, so readiness is like when the path is sort of clear enough, I think, clear, like clear the snow out of the path. You may be ready to go to the store, but the road's filled with snow. So I don't think that someone who's needs to get to the store with the roads filled with snow would say, "Oh, the reason I'm not going to the store is because I'm lazy." It's like, well, there's a road full of snow. That's more how I think about it. It's
Mhm.
it's like it, can this, when you're really ready for something, you're almost unstoppable.
And you may stop. You may stop one path and start another one, and people say, like, why are you stopping that, which seemed to be working, and starting this, which seems to be entirely new? Like, you may get the exactly wrong advice, and it may be exactly the thing you need to
That's
do.
why I'm always saying there's no right or wrong. There's right
Mhm.
for you or wrong for you.
Mhm.
That, every time I hear some say it's right, that it's not right. Right for you or wrong for you. It's like, does it resonate? Does something feel slightly better? I mean, e- slightly worse. Like, I don't know. I mean, those places are important. And when someone is saying, I'm not getting where I want to get to, and the absurd advice of, you're really worried about this, you're thinking about this, you're ruminating over it, but you're lazy. It's like I don't even believe that word applies to anyone for anything. It's a word that should be eliminated, because your people are accomplishing things all the time. And sometimes we don't know that that the best way to move forward with something is to absolutely love it, or to love the result of it so much. I mean, like,
Mhm.
I'm very fussy about my house. It's not that I love every second of making my bed or doing the dishes, but the scales have been tipped enough for me that I love living in a clean house more than the issue of the work that's involved.
Right.
Just so you've got to find that balance. Readiness is about, do you love it? Is it of interest to you? Are you passionate about it? When things get tough, do they feel like insurmountable challenges, or do they feel like,
I
"Yeah, I
got
got
this.
this.
That's
I
it.
got
I
this."
got this. That was the words, the exact words that were coming to me. It's like when I was writing my first book, I'm writing the now, I'm working on um the second edition of the very first book that I wrote, which was Logic for Dummies. And I remember like hearing someone say, writing a book, because that was my first real long book. I've written other books, but this was like a book with a theme, and it was going to be 400 pages and yada yada. And I remember someone saying about writing a book is like taking a trip at night. It's like you've got your headlights, and you could see 30 or 40 feet ahead of you. And if you make that mean I can't see all the way to California, you're not gonna go on the road. You're just gonna say, like, I turn on the headlights, I could only see 30 or 40 feet ahead of me. I can't see California, and that's where I'm trying to go, so I'm not going to go anywhere. It's like, no, if you just keep moving, 30 or 40 feet ahead of you will get you all the way to California. So it's just basically
Yeah.
like get up in the morning. A friend of mine says, get up in the morning and do what needs doing. That's it. And in writing, it's just sort of like put words on paper until you're convinced that it's not being productive. And if it's being productive, keep going. And if it's not, go get some coffee and try again.
Yeah. Right. But it's also when readiness is a combination of so many things, you know, it's you're completely equipped to write a book on logic. I'm ill-equipped to write that book. No matter how much hard work I would be putting into this, a lot of times people get an idea that's external. Like
Yeah.
someone gives them an idea. If, I see this on the internet sometimes, like how to make all this money in 6 months on
Right.
doing this thing. But
Right.
are you what readiness is like you may be ready to make all that money, but do you love what you're doing? Because you're going to be spending a lot of time doing it. And does it mean you love every aspect of everything about that job? But maybe not. But I'm asking you, like, I'm a life coach, and there's almost no aspect of life coaching that I don't like. I mean, do I like I mean, does anybody really like writing up the bill? Maybe not,
Right.
but it doesn't feel it's a blip on the screen in the way of handling the business end of this job than it was like when I was decorative painting. There were beginning to be more parts that I didn't like than I did.
And that was the sign of like the off ramp is coming.
The
Somewhere up
off
ahead.
ramp was
Right.
right. I was noticing it. It's like that was like, writing a document in triplicate and like, having all of these things where now it's like, Zell me at the end of the session. You get what I'm saying? It's like there's so many there's so many things I love and things that are almost negligible that I don't like.
Right.
And so is ready, like when someone's saying, oh, you're not putting the work in, it's like the reasons you're not putting the work in are very important because you're not just not putting the work in. There may be a very good reason you're not putting the work in. And part of it is just you're not, there's something so much better for you. Why don't we find the things again, going back to like the basis of what I consider my coaching and I hope good coaching is, what's amazing about you? What do you love? What lights you up? What all of these things to to just to say to somebody, well, you're not you're not doing well at this. It's like Captain Obvious. It's like, yeah, I see I'm not doing well at this, but I don't know why. And we've sort of taken the humanity out of our jobs. I mean, yes, not everybody gets to do what they love, but there are things even in the things that we don't love that are feel better if you're again, does something feel slightly better? Are you moving towards better all the time? Does something feel slightly better, slightly worse, or do you not know?
Yes.
The reason for these questions is that are that if we're consistently moving towards better, that better gets better,
Absolutely.
right?
And I just want it to be sort of on record that miracles happen. Like they're not, it's not the parting of the Red Sea. I mean, it can be, right? It can be. Okay. But, if you're looking for latter-day miracles and you're like, oh, I want to see like someone make the Empire State Building disappear, it's like, okay, well, that may not happen. But a person's life moving in the direction of like it took me like I never thought I would meet the right person, and now I've been with them for 20 years. And that's a miracle, right? I never thought that I would have a child, and now I have one, and she's growing up, and it's a miracle. And people that like, how is that not a miracle? How it like,
And well,
how is the Empire
I
State
love the
Building disappearing?
description of
Yeah,
miracle. I mean, like one of the greatest descriptions of miracles. Every act of love is a miracle.
absolutely.
And
Right.
the thing about it is, we don't always get to see the effects of that miracle.
Yes.
So we're not always privy to an act of love that is going on in the world, and we don't necessarily get to see the dot, dot,
Right.
dot.
When you hold
Sometimes we're lucky enough where we do.
when you hold the door for someone, regardless of whether they say thank you, which usually people do, people usually say thank you. They're like, thank you, it was a nice, whatever. Like that is an act of love. And it goes out there and it makes someone's day a little bit better. And who knows what ripple effects that has. And if I don't,
Everything has a ripple effect.
right.
Everything has, and so if every act of love is a miracle, then we're yeah, we're getting to the, we're creating miracles by our thoughts, by our feelings, by the way we say hello, or in every little thing that we do, we have a chance to create something that snowballs and becomes a greater miracle in the long run, something that we can actually see. We all look back, and I'm looking back on the story of Armand and how I became a life coach, and that's very miraculous to me. Not every day is like that, but I do have the choice of, you know being the most loving I can on a day-to-day basis. So I think we've
Yeah,
kind of run the gamut here a little bit,
I
I
think
think it
so.
was,
And
yeah.
I've
So
also got a little more on readiness, but it's like it would be opening a new topic. And I really like the topic of readiness. Because I think it's mysterious. It's ultimately mysterious. The only way you could tell that someone was ready is like, oh, I guess they were ready because they got that thing. Like they're raising a baby, they're in the relationship, they got that job, they took that amazing trip. Like it's only in retrospect that you can say like, oh, I guess readiness was present because that person is doing it. But what that looks like when you're coming at it, that's mysterious. And I have a couple of ideas about what that like ways of looking at that mystery. And kick it to next week, I think.
yeah, and I think it's, I think we've done a lot today. I think we've, shared some things about us, and maybe open people's eyes to look and say, how many times has that amazing, miraculous thing happened, and I didn't hold on to it or share the story? And people need to hear stories like this, not because, you know, but because there's so much out there that says that's never going to happen for you. Like,
People don't care about each other. It's not like the good old days when people, helped each other. And, we have these myths of like the good old days were just wonderful times with people just helping each other raise barns. And that's all it was. And nowadays, people don't even say hello to each other in the street. And it's like,
which isn't true.
I don't think any of that's true. I think people are like, one thing about people is that they're a constant and they're going around like, they've always been capable of fear and they've always been capable of love. And now let's see what that looks like.
Yeah, and just to end on the idea, this is why we emphasize certain things. Love is more powerful than fear. And how does that play out, and how do we expand upon that? To be continued. This is, as I said a long time ago, this is almost like an infinite conversation,
Right.
because love is infinite, and we can just keep building upon this. And I love the topic. We'll put a pin in the topic of readiness,
Sure. If
and
that
we'll
seems
we'll
like the place,
I
we'll
love it.
we'll get back to it at
Yeah.
some point, I'm sure. Maybe next week.
Yeah, we keep circling back around to many of the same concepts. So for now, we'll put a pin in that, but with the idea of getting back to it, because I think you're right. I think you're onto something with that one, and it just feels right. So it feels ready.
It is. It feels ready. I feel ready for it. Yes.
Yes. So anyway, everybody have a great week. Mark, you have a great week. If you're
Tammy, right back
enjoying
at
these
you.
podcasts, thank you. If you're enjoying these podcasts, like and subscribe would mean the world to us. Please comment. We'd like to hear your feedback. We get a lot of feedback in our everyday life about this, but we're we can take it in the comments.
Absolutely. And
You know,
especially I'd like to re-extend, tell us about your miracles or tell us about the miracles that you feel you're ready for. And we'd love to hear about that.
yes, for sure. We would love to hear that. So until next week, everybody have a wonderful week, and I'll see you then. Bye, Mark.
Bye, Tammy.